Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this first edition of Partners Connect. I am very happy to welcome you. My name is Alexandra. I'm an account strategist for the Google Marketing Solutions team. I work for the Belgian market, but I'm based here in Dublin. And as you might be able to hear from my very subtle accent, I'm actually originally from Brussels. And I'll be talking to you about the back-to-school season in a minute. So without any further ado, let's just already kick off the agenda and see what we will be covering today. It's actually pretty straightforward. We just want to see two things. One, kind of go over what the back to school season is. So what is the size, the scope of these retail events, the timing exactly, and what do we see happening in the markets? And then, of course, how could you possibly build a strategy around this time? So we'll give you a bit of an example, some pointers, things to keep in mind around that time to make sure that you're just set up for success during this very important commercial events. Last but not least, I'll be keeping some time for questions at the end. If I'm the most suitable person to answer, I will. Otherwise, I'll try to help you along. But this is a live stream. Feel free to just pop in your questions while you're watching me and listening to me. I hope so. And I'll just get to it towards the end. But don't wait until the end to ask your questions. You can actually send your questions in at any time. And then maybe just also one thing I would like to say is that this is the first edition. We are extremely excited about it. I hope you are as well, but we're also always looking for feedback. So feel free to leave us some type of feedback, whether through the Google Partner community or your contact person. We would highly appreciate that. All right, so what is back to school? In numbers, if we look at, for example, the UK market, back-to-school season represents a £620 million market. And that is about twice the size of the second biggest commercial event of the autumn, which is Halloween. Not only is that a big thing, it's a big market, but it's also still growing. It's growing at around 7% in the UK. Around our regions, that's actually a double-digit growth number. So that's why we're kind of touching upon it today, because it's actually a really important seasonal moment for retail, especially, and also in our regions. And what you'll see here on this slide is actually another commercial event that we could not mention, and that is Amazon Prime Day. So I'll get back to it in a moment. All you need to know now is that Amazon Prime Day actually already happens in July, so it's not the autumn, it's still this summer, but it's heavily targeted towards back-to-school shoppers, which is why we wanted to mention it today. So what is Amazon Prime Day exactly? It's a one day filled with sales and actions organized by Amazon, of course. And Amazon's main goal here is to push Prime subscriptions. So that's why all the sales, all the actions, are only eligible to Prime subscribers. And the reason I really wanted to mention it today is, as you may know, Prime has been available in Belgium only since November of last year. So this Prime Day of 2018 will be the first one where Belgian shoppers are also eligible to partake in all the sales and actions. And we can actually see from a lot of the product categories that Amazon is pushing that day that it is quite targeted towards back-to-school shoppers. We'll get to those categories in a moment. So the types of deal that they have, you have all-day deals, you have deals that only take you a couple of hours. And very important to know as well is that for Amazon itself, in terms of transactions and sales, Prime Day is actually bigger than Black Friday and Cyber Monday combined. So it's actually a huge transactional day. Don't forget about it. And especially because it's already taking place in July. They only announce the exact date when it happens about a week or two beforehand. So I'm pretty sure we're going to hear about it pretty soon. And in case you were wondering if Belgian shoppers and consumers are aware of this event, they have been for the last 3 years. If you look at this slide, we kind of took a look at the Google Trends of people looking for Amazon Prime Day for the past 3 years. The last big peak you see there is actually the one of 2017. And then the one even before that is the one from 2016. And funny enough, it seems that the Belgian consumer was even more aware than the Dutch consumer of Prime Day. So the awareness is definitely there. And we see a little bit of a gap between the awareness of the actual consumer and the awareness of the retailers around Prime Day, which is why we wanted to mention it here today. Now, there's also a little bit of a special thing about the Belgian marketplace as a whole. Of course. When it comes to the French-speaking part of Belgium, is actually quite active on Amazon. The Dutch-speaking part will be more likely to go towards Coolblue or Bol.com. But of course, Coolblue and Bol look at what Amazon is doing. So if Amazon is having a huge retail event at the beginning or the end of July, you can be quite sure that Coolblue and Bol.com will do something as well. So making sure that you will be present around that time as well, it's really important to make sure that you don't lose out on a big part of it or a big chunk of the transactions already. Because timing-wise, you might be surprised at how early the whole season of back to school peaks. To give you an idea, the peak in purchases actually already happens the second week of August. So the biggest amount of transactions in August purchases, will happen that week. That means that everything else from the build-up, the research, the interest phase needs to happen way before that moment. And you need to be able to execute around that time in August as well. So it peaks pretty early. To give you even more of an idea, 2 out of 5 shoppers actually say they start researching before the summer happens. I personally think that's quite a simple explanation to this. Mostly if you are a back to school shopper and you're actually shopping for your children, you usually get the shopping list before the summer vacation happens. So that's reason one. Reason two is budget oriented. You spend a lot of money during the summer when it comes to vacations and leisure and whatnot. So usually before the summer is also still a good time budget wise to do some purchases, a bit more tricky in September. So as I mentioned, 2 out of 5 already looking before June, before the summer, into where they're going to purchase something. The second, actually the highest peak in research happens then in July, and the highest peak in transactions happens in August. When it comes to September, you see that we still see a little bit of action there, but it's really the smallest amount of this whole period. So making sure we are getting ready right now, which is also why we're having this connect right now, is very important. Then what are people actually buying or looking for? So out of 100 people that are classified as back-to-school shoppers, 67% of them mentioned that they are looking for consumer electronics. So that's everything from smartphones to laptops. 56% of them were also looking into kids fashion, which is again quite straightforward as well. And then a half was also looking for anything that's sports related and school supplies. I think there's no big surprises here, but one thing I do want to mention is when it comes to sports attire. So there's something here that we find that is quite interesting, is that anything that is hobby related will peak around that season, because most hobbies that people have, maybe playing football, basketball, karate, even arts, will match the academic calendar, will restart usually in September, finish in June. So anyone, and that goes from children to adults that have any types of sports or activities they do outside of their main activity, will look towards that period for interesting sales and transaction to be able to buy all the equipment that they have. So if you have any type of specialty retailer or outdoors leisure retailer, they will also be booming around that time. So I think that was quite important to mention. Then when it comes to the the second dimension, what are people looking for in the products they're looking for? It's mainly an interesting price, a good value for money. So the price dimension is pushed heavily during this time, which can be a little bit different than an end of year purchase where you're mostly looking to gift a beautiful gift and quality and something that will last for longer. When it comes to back to school, we're looking at practical, pragmatic products that have a good price. So making sure that you take that into account when it comes to your advertising as well, your ad copy and which products you push forward, I think that's also quite important. And how are people looking for products? About half of the Belgian back-to-school shopper will research or purchase through mobile. This is quite important to mention, as you can carry out different types of strategies to have be present on all types of devices and be the most appropriate and visible on all types of devices. There's an even bigger difference, of course, between the research phase and the purchasing phase. So when it comes to the research, that's fairly mobile driven. To give you even an idea, about 2 out of 3 smartphone shoppers still research a smartphone they want to buy in store on their mobile. So that means that they will look something up while they're in between the aisles, even though they are in the physical store. So making sure you're very present and relevant and efficient on mobile is going to be very important. Also because of another reason, and that's just the growth of the whole search market in Belgium in the past 3 years has been driven by mobile search. So if we lose out on mobile, we lose out on a big chunk of the picture. So making sure that mobile is really part of an integral part of your strategy is going to be an absolute cornerstone of your back to school strategy. And when it comes to mobile, we can actually think of different types of case studies that you can use for mobile. So what people are looking for to do on a mobile, it is checking product reviews, it is creating shopping lists, searching for special deals and sales, any type of information when it comes to store hours, contact information, people will look up online. Research, of course, as mentioned, just in general, mobile will be an important player there, comparing prices, and then last but not least, an actual purchase from mobile. So just these are a couple of pointers, ideas, but of course, there's plenty of stuff you can do on mobile. We just want to make sure you don't forget about it. All right, now that we know kind of the setting here, let's kind of look at what we can do to be present during back to school. So when do we need to show what, to who, and how can we deliver that message? Very easily. And the way we set it up here is just by looking at kind of like an ideal timeline. Actually also kind of starting from a back planning, knowing if the peak moment is in August, when do we need to do what? So this is kind of an example template timeline of how you could build up your strategy. So of course you have to take into account the research part. So you see here on the timeline, we only started it from the 2nd week of July. That research phase already started 3 weeks ago. So we can actually make it much longer and build up the research itself. From research comes interest. So this is where the people are going to start showing a little bit of more purchasing intent. So how to make sure that we capture that already. And when the comparison gets more intense, how do we make sure that as a retailer, we are still present and showing our best assets. Then the peak happens. This is more of an execution mode. How do we make sure that we get those purchases out? And last but not least is the final week of shopping before usually the school starts again. So let's take at the 2 first phases together of research and interest. So what's interesting here? Obviously, shoppers are starting to look around. I think one thing that's interesting is, as we were mentioning budget before, if you want to push expensive products, this is going to be the time to do that because this is also the time where most people still have some budget and are looking to purchase the bigger items. We want to make sure that we actually kind of lay a foundation for when we're going to peak in both visibility and transactions. When it comes to audience, since this is the first time that a shopper will do a reach out on any type of platform for certain types of products, you want to make sure that you protect your existing customer. You go back to them first. They are your easiest clients to convince again, most probably your most highest valuable one, and it's just the best strategy possible to try to really maintain that customer value, lifetime value. So go back to your existing customer and prepare your acquisition. So what do we mean there? And it's more a time of product, is make sure that you have lists in place, remarketing lists, audience lists that will start generating and collecting all the types of cookies that might be interesting for you when the peak season happens. So product-wise, a couple of other things that you can do is try to target more generic keywords. So go look a little bit more upper funnel, make sure that you have presence and you capture volume first. Grow those remarketing lists, as I was mentioning. Showcase your bestseller items. So that's just quite easy. Just look at what sold the best last year. What are we going to push forward this year? Mobile speed is going to be critical because this is a highly research-intense phase. Research mostly happens on mobile, so make sure that you don't lose out potential clients just because they had to wait for your website to load. And then make sure that if you have any type of shopping campaigns, dynamic remarketing, then everything from feeds, that's all up and running. It's a little bit of admin, making sure that you have all your right product IDs, descriptions, pictures, but this is the time to do it if not already, because the next phase is going to be a little bit too late to do that. Because the next phase, the one of the peak, is a pure, as I mentioned, execution and transaction phase. So this is where shoppers will make the most of their shopping. We want to be sure that we are present at any moment where that purchasing intent is going to be shown, and make sure that also you use this moment to acquire new clients. Now think again about just the end of the year. Back to school moment is the beginning of the retail season for the whole end of the year. If you acquire customers now, these are again easy customers to go back to when it comes to Black Friday or the holiday season. So don't be afraid to bid a little bit higher on new types of acquisitions and customers, and look at targeting options that will actually enable you to get in contact with an interested audience but that hasn't been to you before. Make sure that you highlight any type of strength. As I mentioned again, the price dimension is going to be important, so make sure that you have all the types of extensions needed and all the information that you can about that in your ad copy. Make sure that when it comes to keywords, that we have all the trends and the most search terms possible in your campaigns. And then, very important, is to monitor the performance of your campaigns, and I'm specifically talking about budgets. This is not the time when you want to run out of budgets. Can you just imagine being a shopper, an actual retailer on Black Friday, and your doors just close at 2 p.m.? That is a huge lost opportunity, and it's exactly the same thing when it comes to your campaigns. So make sure you set up everything that you need, from the right billing lines to the correct and realistic campaign budgets, to make sure that you capture the share of the market that you're looking to capture to fuel any type of growth for your company. So that's really quite important. Then last but not least, we have this last chance for a transaction or a purchase. So that usually happens around the first week of September. So you can actually do a last draw. You gained a lot of information from this huge data that you got in the peak of the purchases. So now that you have this extra amount of data, you can actually build similar types of audiences, similar types of targeting based on that. Make sure you reach those price-sensitive audiences. And then something that we also wanted to mention is that since now it's kind of like a final stretch and people will be in more of a rush to get some products back home, they will mostly also go to the offline stores. So making sure that you guide your customers the best way towards your store, if you have a physical location, is really important. So adding any types of keywords like shopping near me targeting is actually a pretty big thing, and then make sure that that's also quite visible on mobile is going to be very important. Make sure that you customize your ads to the fullest to make sure that you have any type of last shopper that's still looking for something. And as always, just to push the relevant type of information. If people are going to be a little bit more rushed for time, make sure you make all the information about your shipping possible. If people are a bit more price sensitive, make sure you push all the information about your prices. And then push people to your physical store, making sure that all that information online, contacting information, opening hours, is absolutely up to date, because this is the time where people will need it the most. And that's about it. So we wanted to give you kind of an overview and an outline of a possible strategy around back to school. We gave you a little bit of a scope and the trends and what we see happening in the markets around that time as well. And I'm going to look if we have some questions now. It doesn't seem we have any questions at the moment. I'm just going to refresh that page to be sure. All right. But that's absolutely fine. So as I mentioned, the only thing we would really ask from you is if you have any type of feedback, types of seasonal events you want to hear about, what type of information are you looking for? Is it more the trends, more the strategy parts? We are all very happy to hear about that, and we would highly appreciate your feedback. So don't hesitate to go back to your contact person to post about it in your communities, and we will most definitely take that into accounts. And for the rest, I'm just going to say thank you for your time, and I look forward to talk to you again soon. Thank you very much. Bye.